The question is whether there are some way out of the equilibrium we have under Prisoner's Dilemma game, right? So we're going to see if there is any way to, end up with an equilibrium which is different from the Prisoner's Dilemma equilibrium, right? The answer is yes. There are some situations in which the equilibrium of Prisoner's Dilemma might be different from the Nash equilibrium we just reviewed, right? The situations are, for example, in the first situation, it's happening when there are changes in the payoff. So for some reason, the payoffs might be different from the one we just saw in the table. For example, there are some fears of punishment. You know that if you, for example, in the case of Prisoner's Dilemma, if one player cheats on the other player, there is a possibility that there would be punishment in the future, in the next round, right? So the fears of punishment may force one player to choose the option which is not happening without punishment, right? The other could be profit share through acquisition. For example, in the case of two firms, one firm through acquisition may share or may get some gains from the other, from the payoff of the other firm, or might be sharing the losses, right? So getting some percentage of the other firm's share may cause the firm to choose another option, right? Instead of being aggressive, they might prefer to be nice because they are sharing the losses as well as the gains, right? And the third situation is happening when there are some possibilities for firms to reduce the consumer's ability to switch to the other firm. For example, your product is not exactly the same as the other firm's product. It's different. It's a slightly different, right? So that means to some extent, it's not easy for customers to switch to the other firm if you raise the price, right? So that could also provide some possibilities of ending up with a different payoff. We also reviewed this situation last week under oligopoly. And the next situation could be when there is price matching. You may have seen that a lot these days across the stores. One store may say, I'm gonna price match the other firms or the other stores' prices, right? So price matching or guarantee for price matching may cause some payoffs to get deleted completely. So we may end up with a different payoff. And then we also may have repeated interactions or repeated games. Under some conditions, repeated games may end up with a different payoff. So let's review some of these situations in more detail. For example, when we have profit sharing through acquisition, when one firm shares the gains and losses with the other one through acquisition. For example, let's assume each firm earns 20% of the other firm. That means if there is any profit for one firm, 20% of that profit goes to the other firm. And so each firm has 80% of its own profit plus 20% of the other firm's profit, right? So in the case of low and high, when one firm charges low prices and the other one charges high prices, the low price charging firm gains 65 profit as a profit, and the high price firm is gaining 35 as a profit, right? So this firm with high price, the profit of this firm is 80% of 35 plus 20% of 65, right? So that means the profit of the high price firm raises to 41, and the profit of the low price firm drops to 59, right? So that means any outcome, any payoff we have like this one, would be transferred to this one, right? So that means the new table, instead of these two payoffs, we are going to have these two, right? And if we try to find a Nash equilibrium for this new table, we are going to end up with this outcome, right? For example, when if firm 2 chooses low price, then the best strategy by firm 1 is to choose high price, right? Because 41 is greater than 40. So this is going to be high price is going to be the best strategy if for firm 1, if firm 2 charges a low price. But if firm 2 goes with high price, in this case, the best strategy by firm 1 is to charge high price 2, right? So high price is the dominant strategy by firm 1. And if we do the same process, it's going to be high price is going to be the dominant strategy for firm 2. And then that means this is going to be the intersection of two dominant strategies, 60-60 or high price and high price. And then instead of ending up with low price, the equilibrium is going to be high price for both firms. The second situation is, for example, when we have price matching. One store guarantees price matching with the other store, right? So that means if one store is offering low price, the other store would offer low price too, right? So that means if there is such a payoff in the table, that should be the same as this one. So this means these two payoffs, they're not going to happen, because as long as one firm charges low price, the other firm actually meets the low price too, right? So these two payoffs, they are not going to happen, right? So that means these two can be dropped and we are going to have only these two payoffs. And if we try the reasoning to find the equilibrium, then this is going to be the equilibrium, because 60 is always greater than 40 for both firms. The next situation is when we have repeated games, right? So that means the game is not a one-shot game. It's not happening once. It's going to happen in the future too. But this situation could be the case, could be different from the prisoner's dilemma, the regular prisoner's dilemma we reviewed, only if it's happening for unlimited number of times, right? If it's happening, if the number of firms repeating is a finite number, then the outcome is going to be exactly the same as the regular prisoner's dilemma we reviewed, right? Let's see how this could be the case. So let's assume the game is going to happen for 10 times, right? Let's say 10 years. Year 1, year 2, and goes to year 9 and year 10, right? So under year 10, this is the last year. So to find the equilibrium, we are going to go backward, right? So we are going to find the equilibrium for the very last year first, and then we go backward to the first year. So over the very last year, year 10, when there is no future and every firm, every player knows that there is no future, right? So that's going to be the last year. Under the last year, since there is no future and nothing is going to happen next year, and there is no possibility of punishment or retaliation in the next year, right? For the very last year, the players are going to play exactly the same as prisoner's dilemma, right? So if we go back to two firms game, which is the same as prisoner's dilemma, both firms would charge low under the very last year, right? Because there is no future. There is no possibility of punishment and retaliation over the next year, right? This is the very last year, right? So this is going to be the outcome, the equilibrium for the last time the game is getting played. How about the year before that? For example, year 9. What's the outcome? What's the equilibrium on year 9, right? In year 9, since every player knows that next year the outcome is going to be low, and the rival is going to charge the low price for sure, right? They know that there's still no possibility for punishment, right? Because anyway, the rival is going to charge a low price, right? So nothing is going to happen worse than that if I charge low price in year 9 too, right? So for this reason, so since the next year, since the very last year outcome is determined and it's kind of already clear to each firm, each player, then the firm is going to pick the strategy same as the very last year in year 9 too, because there is no possibility of punishment and retaliation next year, right? So that means for year 9, they're going to play the game exactly the same as the very last year. So that means the equilibrium is going to be low 2 for year 9, right? The same reasoning is going to happen for the every single year before year 9, right? Every year, the next year outcome is determined and it's gonna be low. So that means there is no possibility for retaliation and punishment. So that means every single year, since the next year outcome is determined, every single year each player is going to play as if this is the very last year, right? And if this is going to be the last year, then they are going to charge low price for every single year, and the outcome it's going to be exactly the same as regular prisoner dilemma, right? So that means if the repeated game is happening for the limited number of times, right? So it's happening finitely, right? Then the outcome is not going to be different from the regular prisoner dilemma. But if the game is going to get played for unlimited number of times, for infinite number of times, right? Then the outcome is going to be different because there is no last year, right? And every single year, there is a possibility for punishment or retaliation next year, right? Since there is no end time, since there is no final year for unlimited number of time game, then every single year there is a possibility of retaliation over the next year, and that could be incentive for each firm not to play low price. Instead, they would be encouraged to pick high price every single year, right? So under the situation in which unlimited number of time is getting played, then there is a possibility for the outcome to be different from the outcome of a regular prisoner dilemma, right? Under this situation, when firms are playing unlimited number of times, then the outcome might be high price and high price for both firms, right? Now, let's see what are the situations or what are the games in which we are going to have more than one equilibrium, right? Sometimes when you use the process to find the equilibrium of the game, you may end up with more than one equilibrium, right? These games are called multiple Nash equilibria games, and there are two famous examples or two famous types of these games, which are coordination games and chicken games. Let's review each one by more detail. Let's start with coordination game. Coordination game involves problems where the mutually inferior outcomes, right? For example, low price and low price by both firms are possible unless firms and agent coordinate with each other, right? So there is a possibility for two firms to coordinate with each other and escape from one equilibrium to the other one, right? So we are going to have two equilibrium, and to see which one would be played actually or in practice, it depends on how or whether the firms are coordinating with each other, right? The examples of these coordination game could be, for example, on which side of the road you are going to drive, right? For example, if you both are driving at the right side or you both are driving at the left side, then everyone's safe. But what if one is driving at the left side and the other one is driving at the right side, right? So there is a possibility of crash and it's not safe at all. So that would be, let's say, entirely or collectively beneficial for everyone to play exactly the same as each other, right? So that means they need some sort of coordination to decide whether they are going to play at the right side or at the left side, right? Or the other example could be technological standards. Everyone, including consumers, producer, and suppliers, everyone would be the best if they are using one or unique technological standard, which is compatible with every single product, right? So everyone would be, the producers would be producing based on that technological standard to make their product compatible for every consumer. And every consumer will provide the same technological standard, and everyone would be much more benefited if they are using a unique technological standard. But which technological standard they need to use, it's what they need to decide on, right? What they need to coordinate with each other and decide on that. So in the case of standard, technological standard, if one producer is going to reach to the critical mass, they need to decide about the standard which is acceptable by everyone, right? And consumer may not be willing to buy a product unless it's compatible with the unique and standardized standards. That's why coordination game could play a role in such a situation and could determine which standard should be played, right? For example, let's assume we have two drivers, right, as two players, and they have two options, either to work with Uber or they need to work with Lyft, right? In this situation, in such an example, network externality matters, right? Both drivers, they are willing to work with one, they prefer to work with one company, either Uber or Lyft. So they both would be the best if they both work with one company, right? Because network externality now matters. They prefer to join to the company with greater network, with better network, right? That means this is gonna be their payoff. If they both join to Uber, then one is going to gain 90, the other one is going to gain 60. If they both join to Lyft, it's gonna be the same. One could gain 60, the other one 90. But if one of them joins Lyft and the other one joins Uber, then they are gonna get much less than the other situation. Each one is gonna gain 20, and if one joins Uber and the other one Lyft, then they're going to get 30-30, right? So you can see that since network externality matters, they are the best if they both join to one company, right? To find the equilibrium, first of all, let's assume driver 2 is driving Uber, is playing Uber, and then the best strategy by driver 1 is to play Uber 2 because 90 is much greater than 20, right? How about what if the driver 2 is driving Lyft, right? In this case, driver 1 is the best to drive with Lyft 2 because 60 is greater than 30, right? So 60 here and 90 here, this is going to be the best response by driver 1. Let's find the best response of driver 2 as well. If driver 1 plays Uber, the best strategy by driver 2 is to play Uber 2 because 60 is greater than 30. If driver 1 is playing Lyft, then driver 2 is the best to play Lyft 2 because 90 is greater than 20, right? So you can see that this one, Lyft and Lyft, or Uber and Uber, they are both the equilibrium of the game. So in this game, as I just mentioned, we have multiple equilibria. So that means they are the best if they both use the same company. But which one should be played? That's what can be determined using coordination. Driver 1 and driver 2, they both need to coordinate with each other and decide whether they want to play Uber or Lyft, right? So like I said, how we are going to end up with equilibrium, it could be determined either by negotiation, coordination, or it could be determined by hierarchy when one firm takes over of the other firm. The acquisition and merging could be the solution to end up with one equilibrium, or sometimes government regulation. For example, government imposes a unified standards to everyone, right? Or it could be the one equilibrium could be actually played through preemptive actions. For example, when one firm enters the market first, enters the industry first, and gets the great deal of market share, right? So like the one we reviewed last week, first mover advantage. So using first mover advantage, they are the first mover and they can establish the standard they want, right? And then that could be the one which is going to get played later too. The other form of multiple equilibria, it's called chicken game. Chicken game is going to get played when the market is not big enough to support all of the firms. So that means only one firm or a few of them are going to survive under this type of market, right? So in this case, building an early lead by establishing a large installed base through intense price competition, which could include also getting the product away, that could determine which equilibrium is going to get played, right? Or what if the player can attract suppliers of complements, right? So at the end of the day, in this case, when we have chicken games, when we have multiple equilibrium, but we don't have a big market, a big industry to support every single firm, then which firm is going to be the winner, or which equilibrium is going to get played? That could be determined when one firm is going to compete aggressively for the price, right? Or one firm can attract suppliers of the complements and establish like a large installed base in the market, right? As an example of the chicken game, for example, swerve or not swerve, right? So two cars are driving toward each other, and if there's a possibility of crash if they don't swerve, right? If they both don't swerve, right? But so if they don't want to get crashed, then either one of them should swerve or both should swerve, right? But if they don't swerve, then the crash is going to happen and both could be affected the worst, right? So if you're going to look at the outcome of this game, if they both don't swerve, they're going to get crashed, and then this is going to be the outcome for both, which is the worst, right? If they both swerve, then the outcome is going to be 0-0. But if only one of them swerve and the other one not, then the one which is swerving is gonna get lost for just a slightly loss, but the other one is gonna win, right? So in this case, the one which is not swerving, it's gonna gain at the cost of the other firm which is swerving, right? So that means under this situation, one firm has incentive not to swerve if they can make sure that the other one is swerving. One firm is winning at the expense of the other firm, right? So this is the feature of chicken game, which wasn't the case under coordination game, right? Under coordination game, both firms are, for example, in the case of Lyft and Uber, both firms are going to get the minimum payoff if one of them is picking Lyft and the other one is picking Uber, right? But this is exactly the opposite. Under chicken game, if one of them is playing one strategy and the other one is playing a different strategy, then one of them is gaining at the expense of the other, right? So the outcome of this game, the equilibrium of this game is going to have two equilibria, and these two are going to be the equilibria of this game, right? One of them should serve, but the other one not, right? So the question is which one should serve, right? Which equilibrium is going to get played in practice? That depends on which player has more power, more negotiation power, more bargaining power, or they can compete on price more like aggressively in the case of firms, right? So in that sense, it's different from the coordination game, right? The other example of chicken game is war of attrition in the standard competition. For example, one firm that like stays in the market and one firm that can establish its own standard can win the entire outcome at the expense of the other firm, right? So if they both exit the market, no one could gain. If they both remain in the market, then both would experience losses because the market is not big enough to support both standards. But if one player remains in the market and the other one exits, goes out, then the one that stays in the market could gain the most at the expense of the other, right? But the question is which equilibrium is going to get played, right? Which one is going to stay and which one is going to exceed the market. So that depends on which player is more powerful in negotiation and bargaining, and which player is more powerful to establish its own standard. The other form could be entry game, right? Whether to enter the market or stay out of the market, right? Again, the market is not big enough to support both. So that means if they both stay in the market, if they both enter, they're going to get lost. But if only one of them stays and the other one stays out, and one of them enters the market, the entering market could gain more, right? But again, the question is which one should enter and which one should stay out. Usually, if I'm going to summarize the options or the strategies we have under chicken game, one strategy is a tough one and the other strategy is a weak one, right? So this is how chicken game is different from the coordination game. Let's review a numerical and a real world example. Let's consider the case of Boeing and Airbus, right? If they both produce like aircraft, then they are going to get lost because there is no enough like customers for both, right? But if they don't produce, then no one can gain. There is a possibility, there is an opportunity that could be used, but no one is using the opportunity. If, for example, American Boeing is producing and European Airbus is not, then the Boeing is going to gain 100 and the other one, Airbus, is going to gain 0. If Airbus is producing and Boeing is not producing, then Airbus can gain 60, right? So there are two equilibria here. But here is a situation in which the government, either the European government or the American government, they can intervene into the market and they can push their gain toward one equilibrium, right? For example, in this case, let's assume the European government is going to intervene by providing subsidies for the European Airbus, right? In this case, if the government is intervening by providing the subsidy, then the gain could be the same as this one. It could be transferred to this game, right? Let's assume the size of subsidy is 10 units. And this 10 units is going to get paid to the Airbus, European Airbus, if they are producing, right? In this case, the Airbus has more than two strategies, right? It has 3 strategies, right? One to do not to produce, right? And the other 2 includes to produce with subsidy or to produce without subsidy. If they produce without subsidy, then the outcome is going to be the same as this outcome, right? But if they produce with subsidy, then their gain when they are producing while Boeing is not producing is going to be added by $10 or 10 units, right? If you find the equilibrium of this gain, you're going to see that we are going to end up with this equilibrium, right? So there is no possibility of multiple equilibria, and then we are going to end up with this equilibrium. Under this equilibrium, then the European government is able to push the gain toward Airbus producing and Boeing not producing, right? So it's how the government can support the domestic producers in the international game and under the international competition. Now, the next type of the game is a sequential game, like the Stackelberg game, right? Under the sequential game, one player moves first and the other player moves after observing the first player choices, right? So the question is how we can find the equilibrium and the outcome of such a game. To find, first of all, if you're gonna draw or if you're going to describe a sequential game, what you need to do is to use the game tree, right? Under the game tree, you're going to put the first mover at the top, and then sequentially you're going down to the last mover, right? Or to the last player, right? So let's see how we can find the equilibrium of this game. To find the equilibrium of this game, we actually need to come backward, right? So we first need to find the equilibrium. So first of all, in designing the game, we put the first player at the top, then two options would be coming out from the first player. And then under each, based on each actions, first player, each action, then what would be the options to the second players, right? And then the second player's option would be written down under each action, each strategy played by the first player, right? So by writing down this way, we are assuming the second player is observing the first player strategy or action and then decides which action to play, right? And then the payoff should be written down at the end of each action by the very last player, right? If we have more than two players, right? So to find the equilibrium, we need to go backward. We are observing the outcome at the end of the tree, right? So then we find the equilibrium, for example, under this side of the tree, and then we find the equilibrium under this side of the tree, and then we go backward, right? For example, let's assume the first player has played bundle. So in this game, we have two players, Bill and Tellus. Assuming Bill is going to decide whether to offer bundle or flat rate. And then Tellus has the same options, but would play after observing the Bill's play, right? Bill's choices. But Tellus has the same option, either to bundle or flat rate, right? So let's assume for a second that Bill has played bundle. If Bill has played bundle, what would be the best strategy by Tellus? If Bill has played bundle, then you can see here that if Tellus plays bundle 2, then they are going to get 10. But if they play flat rate, they are going to get 8. So that means Tellus can gain more if they play bundle 2, right? So at this side of the tree, this is going to be the outcome. So all we can do, let me share the whiteboard here. Yep, here. So under Tellus, if Tellus plays bundle, what we can do is that we can just delete this part of the game. and assume the outcome is 6 and 10, or bundle. Let's use maybe this one better. Yeah. Oops. Right? So then the outcome is going to be 6 and 10, right? So how about this part? How about this side of the tree? At this side of the tree, if Bell plays flat rate, then the best strategy by Tellus is to play flat rate 2, because 5 is greater than 4, right? So for this side, we are going to do the same thing. We need to delete this part. And instead of this side, we can just write down the payout, which is 3 and 5. So this is going to be the payoff for Bill. Now Bill needs to decide, knowing that if Bill decides for bundle, Tellus is going to bundle 2. If Bill goes with flat rate, Tellus would go with flat rate 2. Then what would be the best strategy by Bill under this reduced form of the tree? Then it's going to be bundle, because 6 is greater than 3, right? So that means this is going to be the best strategy played by Bill, right? Because under this strategy, Bill can gain more. So that means bundle is going to be the equilibrium of the game. And under this equilibrium, Bill is going to gain 6 and Tellus is going to gain 10, right, as the payoffs. So this is how we determine the equilibrium for the equilibrium of the game. So sorry, let me share my screen for the whiteboard. Yeah. So this is going to be the reduced form of the tree, right? After deciding what would be the best response by Tellus, we just drop that part of the tree and we write down the payoff here, right? And if it's going to be the reduced form of the tree, and if this is the reduced form of the tree, then what's the best strategy by Bill? It's going with bundle, because under bundle, Bill can gain 6, while under flat rate, it's going to gain 3, right? So that means Bill is going to go with bundling, and the equilibrium is going to be bundled by both firms, both Bill and Tellus, and the gain is going to be 6 and 10. So this is how we decide about the equilibrium, finding the equilibrium of the sequential game. So the difference is that we need to go with the game tree, and to find the equilibrium, we start backward. We start from the down of the tree, and then after finding the equilibrium of each side of the tree, we delete that side, and then we go backward to find the equilibrium of the entire game. And that was all we had for today.